Hello. Oh, you already got me. We good. Yeah. Look, Nawadi is Lindsay, she at your table. Dr. Lindsay, she at your table. Yeah. Hey, peace, power, and profit, everybody. So I'm letting you guys tap in, get some inside information on how to really build your community and get this funding. You gonna be, hey, listen, I'm giving you the blueprint now. You need to take notes. The guy that's coming up next is Harold Mitchell. He actually did it in his community. He goes out high. He's one of the leaders in our community. Hey, just listen to you. Oh, Shanisa. She's gonna be sitting at that table. Okay. And then I'm standing right when once I get. Oh, you already got that. Oh, Tiffany right here. Oh, we have one more. Oh, I can do it. But Tiffany is super neat. Yeah. I'm sorry, y'all. So we fully engaged our room. I'm looking for he took too long of a break. He needs to get back in here because he's the person who's gonna give it up. We're teaching you guys who to partner with, municipalities, colleges, other community partners, government agencies, and yourself in your calls, and listen for the key words on how to go after this funding. So you may not have it on. You have to listen to the key words because this is what's going to get you an avenue. So it's one thing to have a cause, and it's another to understand how to go after. So pay attention, okay? I'm trying to give y'all the low. For those of you who was on here yesterday talking about cult leaders and we don't know what we do, we don't know what we're talking about. Please, we are a living testimony. The next person you're gonna hear is Harold Mitchell. He actually did it in his community. He actually went from a $20,000 grant to a $300 million. He did 100 units. Supposed to give it to right there. She just went out the door in our community. And he built up, I think it's like 100 houses. But you'll hear the story in a second. A physical medical facility, a grocery store, farms, you name it. But you get to hear his testimony. We have the Environmental Protection Agency here themselves, those that the individuals who are actually giving the funding out. We have 2 corporate sponsors who are here, funded us $100 million to put on this event. 100,000 and another 100,000 to uphold our SLIMS program for science. So I'm giving you all the resources we're sharing. We're not holding any information. So hey, so everything else is up to you. So we'll get started. Trying to see where Unc is. It's popping. Stand by. You man. You see Calvin Washington back there? You know Calvin, right? Yeah. Yeah, he snuck in back there. That's his daddy. Oh, you don't know that kid? Yeah. Water testing and all of that stuff. Yeah. He used to be one of the county councilors in Richland County. That's Valerie. Oh. Institution. So we're surrounded by water. And they have just flying. My bad. I'm looking at the fence line and basically goes there a lot. We'll look on the back table. Yeah, I went and got, you need one? Yeah, better hurry up before they run out. I'll get you, I'll get y'all to see Uncle because like I'll catch him on the next break. Right, right before our lunch break. He's probably out here networking. So we buying a little time here. So peace, power, and profit. Hey, listen, if you know someone who has a nonprofit organization who's interested in uprising their community, hey, let them tap in. Give us a few minutes. We get ready to get started.
You get a phone, right? Get a snap phone, and
Look, put it right here. Put it right here. She stepped out. She over there somewhere. Yeah, just sit right there. Yes.
They got here stuff. They gonna give out.
We give this to you right here.
So first of all,
Thank you, dear. You're welcome. Thank you. Hey.
Well, this is what happened. This is what happened. Listen to everybody. And then.
My bad.
President Lawrence Grant, NAA, but also the chair of communication department of Finland. So if you need somebody to have a practice with the area, it's well worth the concern. Right. Right on phone right there.
Sign every part right here. So.
Yes, Derek, you and I.
So all you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lady in the black. Oh, no, shit. I'm not sure you can get for this. You figure it out.
Yeah.
Five seconds. 40 seconds. I am counting. Hello, can we have your attention, please? We want to make sure that we're diligent to the timeline. So if you can have your seats at this time, so we can go ahead and get started, because our next guest has arrived. Our next speaker is ready.
Okay. All right, I'm going to give you all another member of the planning team, Lower Richmond Zone, Bianca Reese, to introduce our next special guest, and let you know how this fits into the journey of the weekend. Say, thank you, Brad. Good morning, family. It's good to be here. Hey,
Good morning.
these beautiful faces. I know y'all have already done this. Take my thumb out.
It might help.
Got you again.
Yeah.
That's the first time out. That's what's up. I just want to say, man, it's beautiful seeing so many faces in here from our community. Somebody asked me, they're like, "Hey, what should I wear?" I was like, it's like a family reunion. Somebody might not necessarily be part of their immediate family, but they friends and just come as you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, just be a part of what we do. So it's amazing seeing you all. Thank everybody for being here. I'm not going to hold us long, but our next presenter, I have a little write out right here that I did for him, but I guess I should read it. But maybe I should just be organic and say this guy is the pioneer of what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Harold Mitchell, as humble as he's going to come to you. We were just talking. He saw an issue. He did where any man would do. He let that issue ride. He stood up. He didn't have the answers. He didn't have a solution. But he had a heart and he had determination. And he found a way. And today, because he had that determination, because he had that focus and that commitment, there's models across the world that uses his format to build their communities. His model is saving communities, saving lives. Right here in Spartanburg. So today, I told Justin on the ride up, we have some tremendous individuals in this room today. I just think individuals who are I told him it was like, if you want to talk about finance and you have Warren Buffett at the table.
Right.
If you want to talk about transitioning from being a great athlete to a businessman person, you have Michael Jordan at the table. You have some of the premier individuals in our area of study today. And Harold Mitchell is one of those. So I won't go any further. He's going to talk about Regenesis and what he did with Regenesis in the Spartanburg community. Then as grown to them. It's all that we have on. Thank you all. Well,
I don't know about all that, brother. But I would like to take this time to, when I walked past the room, I heard Laura Richland. And the first thing that came to my mind was the person that actually, one of the first, Mildred Myers with South Carolina Environmental Watch. It was very, yes, man. We talk about legends and all these other accolades. It was Mildred. So I was telling Omar now a second ago, going past that west office off the side of the road where it was pretty dark down there. I remember telling Mildred, it's like, all right, it's getting kind of dark down there. It's looking like Mississippi Burning. Get back to your actually. How EPA, the work they're reaching for, and Omar is, you talk about giving somebody a stick and running. Omar did just that here in South Carolina. He's another, pillar here in South Carolina. He's got authentic heart. There's a whole lot of show horses, but we need some work horses and some people to tell the truth. So the story that I'm going to tell you, this is the story of what took place in Spartanburg. I had no idea. I'm not going to sit up here and pontificate talking about I'm a whatever in EJ. I didn't know anything about the environment or environmental justice. I just knew that we had a problem. And this is the house that I grew up in front of. On the right to the left is the fertilizer plant. This fertilizer plant closed in 1986. But they replaced my parents' car, my uncle's car next door, because how the ammonia nitrate fertilizer was eating up everything metal. So the screens on the porch, we would change those every year. Our house is actually part of the footprint of the fertilizer plant. Now, in back of the fertilizer plant was a landfill. That was the city municipal dump where they were the owner, operator, and transporter of this landfill, to where, according to the state, that didn't exist. And this was a clean bill of health. It's on the other side of the railroad tracks. And because there's no zoning in Spartanburg County, a chemical plant actually ended up moving in next door to the landfill, because they didn't know that that was a landfill, because there was no record of a landfill being there. It was never capped. All the, the methane that was there, and their ethylene oxide tanks were next to the actual landfill. Now, ethylene oxide, for those that are the scientists and the technicians, it's kind of like in the Ten Commandments when you see that little hovering little smoke going on. If there's a leak or a seepage, it would go to a source of ignition and come back and explode. Now, if one of those tanks that blew, it would have blown the entire community. But there were 6 of those tanks there. So I didn't know any of this. And how all this started actually was I was sick, passing blood, throwing up blood. Doctors couldn't determine what was going on for about 8 or 9 months. Lost a tremendous amount of weight after I'd left when I was playing ball at USC. And nobody couldn't figure out what was going on. And I'm going to speed this up to get to the point, but I just want to paint a picture for you, was that it was when my dad, we went to this funeral, and the minister was talking about how this decorated Vietnam veteran, people were going to forget all these accolades in a week. And as we were riding back from the cemetery, I was like, man, what did you do to make any kind of impact here in this community? Because I had almost accepted it myself that it's like, okay, this may be the last time looking at this, that, and the other. Because every time you go into one of the hospitals or down to Augusta, they would always, he's too young for this, and couldn't figure out. So it's like, just tell me that I've got whatever kind of cancer so we get this over with. Never got that. But that night, I was looking at this thing on TV, and it was T.D. Jakes. He was in West Virginia, and he was ministering on stewardship. And he said the word regenesis. He said, if we could just go back and regenesis the moment that we dropped the ball, and started talking about all the different pillars in life, social, economic, the whole gambit. Never heard that before. And when he said that, it kind of stuck with me. And for those of you who have not been saved all of your lives, when you had that little bit too much to drink and you went to that commode and you was throwing up and you was like, please, Lord, move this, I'll never do it again. That's how I was that night. I was like, please give me another chance, blah, blah. And that next morning I got up, and I'm just showing you this because I stood in front of the house, and it was kind of like I was remembering what Bishop Jakes said. It was like, start at your own front door. Don't try to conquer the world. Start at your own front door. I had never looked at that fertilizer plant as a problem before. It was the livelihood and the engine in the community. But then I started thinking about it, where I don't speak. But right here, every Sunday morning, my mom would go out with blankets and wrap the women who were sexually assaulted, because that was a dead end road from the club that was on the other side of the tracks. That was the kind of like the whole thing. That became an incubator for a lot of drug trafficking and all kinds of activities that were taking place at that site. And that's the same thing all over the country. So when you see these movies, Hollywood always have the gangs and all this stuff around abandoned facilities, because it's the least, there is no patrolling around abandoned facilities. And so that morning, when I looked at that plant for the first time and thought about it, and kids used to run in and out of there, I called the county to see about, closing that fence there, because that was later when they put the fence up. And they made an appointment with me. I went to DHEC, the local office, and the young lady, she was a new receptionist. She gave me the files on IMC. She said, are you here to see the FOIA? And I thought FOIA was person. for you to come around the corner. So I tried to pretend like I knew what I was doing. So she put all the files on the desk. And then she asked me, and she's like, do you want me to make copies of this? I was like, yeah, I want all of them. And then she let me go in the back room and started flipping through the files. And when I started flipping through the files, what we were told that it was harmless fertilizer. So when I started seeing words like toxicity and hazardous, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I was thinking to myself, well, is this what made me sick? And the more I flipped, and then I'm looking at pictures, and then I saw on the back page, no one had ever asked for these files before on that site. And when I was looking at it, it's like, wait a minute. Then I started thinking, my sister who died in this house, get that feedback. But where that D is right there, where you see DHEC, it used to be how the road was before they opened it up. But the raw materials was right there. In front of the house was the front door, but the window. And I took a lot of the stuff, you know, the more I started compiling, and it was like an obsession in a week, I took the files to the local DHEC office, to the coroner's office, because I never believed my parents when they kept telling me how my sister died. So the coroner said, you know, she died of this sepsis encephalitis, this germ poison. And did your mom smoke? And I was like, no. But he matched up long-term, short-term exposure of a lot of the raw materials there. Then that's when I thought about it. My mom's sister's daughter died the same way. Then next door, there was another kid that died with sepsis encephalitis. Then I started thinking, it was like, wait a minute, that whole street, nobody died of natural causes. Everybody died of lung cancer or rare respiratory diseases on the street. I didn't go out telling everybody what I found at that point, but it was just putting the pieces together. And it was like peeling an onion. The more I peeled, the more I began to see the lies of this facility. Still not knowing anything about environmental justice, this just became an obsession at that point that I can't believe that this actually took place there. And in the files, you know, they had, you know, when I told you how they said they had cleaned this place up, it was perfect clean closure. That was the exact same thing that was in the fertilizer mixture of Timothy B. Faith with a couple of drums that took down Oklahoma City. This is what we had there. And I looked in the files, and I used to tell people when I go into school how, you know, everybody used to brag about where they lived, and the kids in our community were always embarrassed about our crime. So when they asked me, because nobody was around us, and it's like, Harold, where did you live? And you have to go across the tracks and next to the gate. So I would tell them, I'm in a gated neighborhood. Where's that? I was like, you know, it's use that little accent. Looks right. It's like, well, I was like, well, we got a lake. Y'all got a lake too? The lake was this pump. That was the old acid pump. And in that, according to the records, now they tested this, it was in 2000. They shut down in 1986. The acidity was like 2.4. Anything under that, under like, you get under 5, red flags go up. We're talking 2.4. And in the files, it said nature would take care of itself. So what the owner did, they took a backhoe and cut a trench to the creek, which is about 3 miles from the state park. So they released over 1 million gallons of acid into the creek. And you can see how it was burning inside. That is exactly. Now this one, that I took my picture, that's the same picture that was in the file. They were told, you know, once this place shut down, to remove this sulfur and take it to the proper C&D landfill. That didn't happen. What happened was the new owner that came in, he dumped it over the back fence. And that picture there to the left, that little pile up at the top, that's the sulfur where they dumped it. And it was, when it rained, it would wash down. I didn't realize neither back then, but sulfur burned in the rain. And all of that brush, the kudzu, when it dries out, it grows, dries out, grows, it was waist high. So it's like all of this sulfur was sitting underneath like all this paper ready to burn, sitting next to the landfill uncapped with all the methane, sitting next to fertilizer plant with all the ammoniumate fertilizer. And all the transformers were still on at the site. And it was kind of like this banner right here where I'm standing, there was brush growing around the transformers. So thank God we never had an electrical storm that hit that, because all of that would have gone up there. I'm just painting this picture for you because we were told that it was safe. And when we got moving in this whole thing about addressing the facility, you know, kind of fast forwarding, they ended up doing this illegal demolition on the plant. And they came out, imploded it, no permits or anything. You know, you got to get a permit when you do any kind of construction work. No permits, they just imploded the facility because, as Kyle, folks from EPA started with the investigation, a lot of the workers in the community talked about how they buried stuff on the inside, on the dirt floors, they just buried stuff. So this is what they did there, imploding this. And so this right here is that sulfur over the back of the fence. Fire chief is holding, that was a 20-ton carrier of the sulfur. It was over the back fence right there. And next to the fertilizer plant, like I said, was a landfill. The trees, you could just push like a big tree and it just fall over because it couldn't root because of the garbage there. The first test pit that EPA opened was of hypodermic needles from the hospital system. Nowadays, you got the IV bags. Back then, it was IV bottles. Because they said, we don't have anything to do with this. Well, everything from the city, 99.9% of everything went in our backyard. I used to look at the bulldozers pushing this stuff in the back during that entire time. Now, the drinking water from this, everybody's well water, it's like the wells was on the wall right here. The landfill is where this wall is located. Groundwater flowed in that direction. So when EPA tested those drinking water wells in 2001, there were still 7 families that were still on the well water. Mm-hmm. And everything that tested out of the landfill was actually in their drinking water. They found some amputated, limbs, but there was one report. And you know how people like to exaggerate stuff? You don't have to exaggerate a problem when you're peeling it back. In the report, it showed that the drivers that would take the barrels from the hospital out to the landfill on Sunday mornings. In the report, the woman with the husband stated that the barrel that they dropped one morning was full of amputated limbs and fetuses. And see, this is what they didn't incinerate during that time. But when you look at this stuff, and people were always saying, oh, those Black folks out there, they're just making stuff up. When they used to talk about the legs and this bone, that bone. Yeah, and they found a couple of those fragments in some of the testing, what they actually did there. So it was nothing made up. Everything that this Black community, who, when you look at most EJ communities, the path of least resistance is those that are not engaged, involved, and a voice in the game. So they try to make you look a certain way when you're about to start raising the flag and accountability starts to pop up. They're going to make you look like the bad guy. And for decades, that's what this community was they're just making this stuff up out there. And so it's back when Senator Fritz Hollins, that's what we did. We took our vice chair of the organization and we elected our vice chair to city council. Because what I got tired of seeing, I was telling Omar way back, it's like we can talk all day long, but when you go into the room, people making decisions and there's nobody there at the table like you that understands what is going on. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be part of that process when they talk about what's important. So when EPA first came in, kind of sorry, sir, but he had a brother that said that there was nothing wrong. He said they should go to a low priority file and turn it back to the state who had lied about this from the beginning. And I played quarterback in high school, and my center just happened to be the chief of staff for Fritz Hollins. And so they ordered the investigation, and when they ordered it, we found that there were 72 contaminants. 35 of those were 5 times above the maximum contamination level. So that started the whole piece of the investigation. And mind you what I'm saying, the civic engagement part where we tend to forget, Representative. And so we started having these meetings in 98, trying to deal, because you can't have one person with all the information. And the thing that kills a lot of communities is when it's just one person, the one person looking like they got all the information, or two. And that's how people start playing that divide and conquer crap with you too. You know, let me call Brother Jones. What about the rest of the community? Well, I'll talk to him. Well, he's a part of the community. Yeah, let me talk to him. And sometimes the Brother Joneses of the world, pockets, you know, tend to look out for their well-being.
Wake it up.
We went before city council. This is just laying this out for you. We went before city council. That was the first time that they had admitted that there was a problem. We didn't go in there screaming, this and that. We had a meeting before the meeting. And I told the folks, because I saw DHEC, their public engagement person, would always go to these meetings, and it was like always throw a rock and instigate. And the meetings would get out of control. And he would always go up on camera, well, we were here tonight and it just got out of control and we're gonna come back, which they never get back. So we told the folks, do not interrupt this meeting. We're gonna go in here. We took the slides of a couple of things that they said didn't exist. We showed that. Everybody on council was appalled. I didn't go with Mayor Tyler, who was our first Black mayor. I didn't like, hey man, you Black man, you supposed to do. We let the evidence speak. And it was the other members of council that said, I'm appalled that this community had to live and go through this. So that night, they said, we're going to work with EPA, but we're going to assign a staff member to work with you, the county, EPA, and DHEC. Anything you need, let us know. And that's when we kind of started that ball rolling, because many people thought it was like, I know you're going to sue. Y'all got to sue. Y'all saw the movie Aaron Brockovich and some of these other, you know, even when Brother Johnny Cochran down in Addison, Alabama, when they won that big suit, tell them, Kyle, communities don't get anything out of that. Excuse my expression. I know there may be some ministers in there, but it's a pissing contest for scientists. One would get on one side, the other get on the other side. You're left out. That did happen with the fertilizer plant. And it came back to it. What people wanted was a fertilizer plant out. The suit didn't get it out. It was a community who sat back at the table with the fertilizer plant and demanded some of these things to take place, is how we got that out there. So EPA created this whole thing when you talk about collaborative problem solving. We became the model for that because Region 4 at headquarters was doing a lot of work with us. This is a silo that people forget. The economic justice, the health, social, environment, all that is one overlapping, hitting to the center, which is environmental injustice. There is no justice when you don't have access to care. You're drinking, you know, poison water and you're breathing toxic air. There's no justice there. That's injustice. And so what we did, the community, we looked at the issues that we had there that we needed to address. And all of those overlapped. And this is before, like now you see the covered programs that's out with all the grants and Justice 40. This is before Justice 40 when we had to kind of like pull this together. You know, there was no looking at the internet and pulling up on the smartphones. This was having to like pull up on their sites and facts and put almost like a forensic wall together. This is what the mill fields look like. That's the other side of, and all these sites were contiguous. There were 2 Superfund sites and 4 brownfield sites. This was the mill village right here. This was nothing but abandoned homes that became crack houses. And as I stated, the fertilizer plant with all the activity there, people would come here and I mean, if we had driven over there, you would have seen this because the conditions, that's one of the houses that was next to the landfill trailer. And when they actually went in to deal, I mean, this person actually lived just like that there. But when they went in to, you know, look at the water, you know, open the cabinet, and there was this big black anaconda sitting in there. Because all the wrecks in the landfill, you got all the snakes that were feeding off of that. So that was the other problem we had. We were inundated with nothing but snakes in that community. And we started a visioning process with EPA Region 4. And we signed an MOU with the city and the county. We pulled everybody together that would point a finger and say, no, you go talk to that one and go talk to the other. And like I said, we pulled our elements looking at transportation. One of the issues with the train on the track, it was most, the CSX, the way they ran. One time there was the fire department couldn't get in to put out the fire because the train was on the track. By the time they got in there, which was like a block and a half, they found a woman and her 2 kids charred to the couch. So access, yes, it was a problem. And this is when we got our EJ $20,000 small grant. Our major focus was health, economic development, and cleaning up those sites. That was what the focus was. And then the next thing you know, EPA, they brought in South African delegation who actually pointed the finger at the chemical plant. So they were like, hey, I'm talking about that abandoned fertilizer plant, but what about this chemical plant? And you can see Ms. Myers there in the picture there. That's the chemical plant. You see at the bottom, those are the houses that's right adjacent to it. And up there on the top, where the tanks are, that's where the wastewater tank, and they had their other tanks buried, is next to the landfill. So we started the dialogue with Tim Fields, who had just retired from EPA, the Office of Solid Waste and Emergency Response. I'm telling you all this because we had to build the framework for all the problems we had and identify the agencies, because Bill Clinton had just signed the executive order on environmental justice. And we put more teeth into environmental justice. Because if people don't know, you think you don't know, they don't know. So I went in there like Richard Pryor. He said, just holler loud and talk. I put more teeth into environmental justice and executive order, like I sounded like I knew what I was talking about. It was like, oh Lord, he's gonna get us in trouble. We could have listened. But we ended up, as I stated, that's the before when we started that deconstruction of the plant. They weren't gonna tear that down. The lawsuit didn't make that happen. It was the community coming to the table with the company, and they put tents around the entire site, deconstructed it, put the air monitors around. They dug a moat, and everything that was deconstructed, they kept the water on it so nothing else would get out into the community. And that's what the after was, and that's right on the front porch looking into the house. Those little kind of like little white dots in the back, those are houses in the city, which the people didn't think that there was nothing wrong with them. But the wind direction, the toxicologists came back and showed that they were in worse shape than we were. And the white community that's right next to it at Duncan Park, they had the exact same health ailments that the community had. So that's when it got really important then. And the fact that they found the deer tracks back there in the sulfur, and it's like, oh my God, there's deer here. So when you get the animals involved, get about the little black children, right. Put animals, right. And I had to do that to a community last year in North Port St. Joe, Florida, Cal. The folks down there in the St. Joe community, they had talked about some of the same issues. I told them, I was like, don't nobody want to hear about your children. They had sea turtles. We took a poster and put sea turtles on the poster.
There's an animal in Little Richland. There's an animal in Little Richland that's unique. I'm Tiffany, there's an animal.
There's a gas facility for being sited there. You got to know where the pressure points are. Animals. You keep going in there, with your chest out, and they're gonna punch it right in
the kiss.
And I'm sorry for y'all for this delay. We had the first interagency meeting in Spartanburg. We pulled all of the agencies together. People talking about the interagency working group. So we pulled every agency down that we had identified to put resources into the project. And you know how most people are when you have one meeting, you're happy about it. When we finish that meeting, it's like, okay, what are we gonna do next? So the next month, we pulled everybody back together and start identifying the issues. And it's like, okay, what are we going to apply for? That's why, they had the city, county, housing authority, everybody with jurisdiction. Because it's like right now, people talk about, Justice 40 and the bipartisan infrastructure. We don't get our hands on the infrastructure money. What nonprofit owns a water system, sewer system, and the roads? Nobody. So you can sit there and play games all day long and say, I'm not going to sit with them because I don't trust them. Guess what? They own the jurisdiction of that. You can't go in there and get it. So you're going to have to work with them. And if you want to take it a step further, do what we did and put somebody on that council that represents you that's got a voice. Until we start looking at the civic engagement side of this with organizing as well, you could forget it. And for that brought the administrator, and that's Mr. Fields and Charles already came here because we started visioning and saying this is what we wanted. We didn't have PhD scholars in our organization. These were people that barely made it to high school. Some of them made it to junior high because everybody worked at the fertilizer plant. So there were no scholars. These were just people who cared about the community and wanted to fix the problem that was there. Now, we identified, got our, with HHS and identified, the federally qualified health centers. This was something that came up because after when I was sick, that it was almost like a year later, my dad started with the same symptoms. His was diagnosed with lymphoma. January 1st, New Year's Day, 97. And when the doctors, told him it's like, this was preventable. That's what stuck with me. It was like, this was preventable. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about preventable? You telling this man that, he's got less than 40 days to live. You can't reverse that. When an oncologist comes in and says, you got X amount of time, might as well. We can say whatever. But I was like, I don't want to see anybody else go through what this man said could have been preventable. And that's when Senator Hollings had secured funding for federally qualified health centers. So we didn't have the funds and the resources like right now with the technical assistance. Thank you, brother, for the technical assistance you're providing. But we got with Texas Southern University, the students came in and did the health survey for me. We used that data. It got us the top grant award from Hershey that year to get our federally qualified health center. We went from medically underserved to where now we have 16 federally qualified health centers in 3 different counties. And we get 52. The number one supporter of top people in the country and federally qualified health centers. This was built for us, but we don't even use it. Coming out of COVID, who died the quickest and tested positive the fastest? Us, because you didn't have a medical home. That's what federally qualified health centers are geared towards. And then when you talk about going to the health center, getting your medications, I can't afford it. So the 340B pharmacy, you're discounted over 60 to 70% in your prescription drugs. And so that was a big piece once we were able to get this in the community. Now, when we got the grant, there's a lot of people who were like, oh, you're not going to get that grant. We got it. Then it flipped. They tried to take our designation and take it to the health department because it was like, you really don't know how to implement this. And thank you for little black boy, but we'll take it from here. And I was like, all right, that ain't happening. And so the next thing you know, we were blocked from finding a location. And if we didn't find a location, we were going to have to give it to the health department. And so then, how the Lord always provided. They ran him in the bush. A friend of mine who was at Howard Engineering School was telling me about what this program him and his friends they were doing, the engineers. They came in and converted this. It was 2 offices. They gutted, converted, got us open. And we beat the deadline of getting open with this first facility, which had only 5 rooms in it. And what I did, I stuck Senator Howling's name on it. I was like, I know you ain't gonna mess with him. He might go after me, but you ain't gonna mess with Fritz Howling. So, and when we had the opening, he came, and that's the little building up there at the left. He came in. I have no more trouble out of nobody else from the hospital board and nobody else, because it's like Fritz is involved with them. And that's why I say you gotta learn your leverage point, power, and who. Never know who you got out there. Don't discount. Pull them in. This ain't you. This is not you by yourself. And if you start that mess thinking it's by you by yourself and what you gonna do, you gonna get run over. And we went into this physician's care facility. That's where we went to right after that, because the hospital saw them. It was like, well, hell, they're taking everybody out the emergency room, because everybody going to the emergency room, there are not emergency room business. It's just where everybody go to. And so when we pulled that out, made that a medical home, the hospital was like, oh, hell, we need to give them someplace bigger, larger. And we went into the deal, and that's when they gave us that facility. And it just kept expanding from there. And that was right before I got in the State House. And I got federally qualified health centers into our budget. We got the largest competitive grant back then at that time to start working with the dental component with our center. And then another one of the other physicians who was complaining about the Affordable Care Act said he was running, going out of business, Obama and da-da-da-da. You got a building that I hate for you to go under with. Give it to C3. He worked it out. Next thing you know, we got into that facility. And it was like, if you got your structure set up, you don't know what you can get. People in the philanthropic world are looking for things to put their money into. But if you ain't got no structure, I don't care how hard you try, and they'll pat you on the back, give you some tissue, trade with you, but you ain't getting no money. You gotta get structured. And that's the one thing the other person from Columbia, Glennis Pearson, who I failed to mention in the beginning, Glennis Pearson wrote the manual for the Secretary of State.
Oh yeah, I know Glennis, she sure did.
Glennis is who structured our organization. Glennis told me, she's like, boy, you can't get a health center and do this economic development.
She in Florida right now.
Let me structure your organization. When Glennis did that structuring, we were able to go out and start applying. Because if we had the nonprofit that was dealing with EPA and the cleanup, we couldn't apply for that because you got to have 2 separate governing boards. We didn't know anything about that. Glean upon the experts that we have in this community. And now that some people have gone that way, we can tell you who to go to. Omar does it all the time. I do it everywhere I go. This is not my information. The same way it was given to me, I'm giving it to you. I'm not asking you for a dime for it. I'm just giving you the tools that was given to me to help you in your community. That's some of them. And you got to forgive me because I pulled the wrong thing up coming in. I didn't make it home yet, just straight from the airport. So forgive me as I run through this. But this is the textile mill. That's the before when we did the cleanup on this. Our organization, we did the first cleanup, voluntary cleanup in the state of petroleum and hazardous waste, because there's another landfill behind this. So our organization actually did the first voluntary cleanup with DHEC in the state that we were funded by EPA. The public housing, the Department of Labor, after we got the grant, the $20 million, it's like, okay, how's this money going to stay in the community? And looking at the contracts, it's like, well, the first thing we got to do is some abatement work. I was like, well, can our folks get some of that? And we did a training class. Everybody in the state has the Workforce Investment Board with it. Create your training program. You don't have to wait for EPA's, no offense, Kyle. Every year waiting for the job training. You can create whatever it is getting ready to take place, create a training program so that you can have your subcontractors ready to go. What we did, people said, they're not going to participate. That group of folks came out of public housing, showed up every morning because we started the class at 7:30. They were there at 7 o'clock. Went through the whole 16 weeks that we had, did the site. When the company left, they took half of the class with them to the Pentagon to do asbestos abatement work. And how long ago that was, the other part of the class went with the folks to Katrina and clean up work there. Now, the two young ladies at the bottom, they got additional certifications. And because we have our home ownership center, we were able to, help with our, because we're a certified counseling agency, helping them, they became homeowners. And the thing is, people keep saying, nobody wants to work, nobody wants to do. Give somebody an opportunity and see. Because the minute those two who had never worked with kids now are homeowners with their, the other girls in the public housing was like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. All you gotta have is a template for somebody to see how to get out of a home. And that's exactly what they did. So that's another training class we did. It was like anything I was thinking that we were going to do was creating, training classes for everything. And the one, even when I got to the state house, they laughed at me. Did a tree wrangling class. And it was like, what? A tree wrangling. Kind of find out anytime there's a storm, whether it's a summer storm, winter storm, the reason it takes so long for the power to come back on is because the trees are on the line. And guess what happened? They didn't have the people, the tree wranglers, to get the trees off the line because everybody retired. We didn't have the 2 people in Spartanburg County. We did that class, and the folks started at $18 an hour. There were companies like, man, who do you have? Let us know when this is over. We will pull those folks out. So there are things when you're talking about building, you can build the capacity of your organization by training people within your communities. I'll just sit there and talk about the visioning process. And this was going on while the cleanup was taking place. We did the health center and all this other stuff before the cleanup. The cleanup didn't take place until we got our seal on that, on the record of decision in 2015. You saw the health center came in 2003 or 4. You can walk and chew gum at the same time in your plan. This, what I showed you before, that was like the OK Corral. Kids will walk through there where I'm standing at, looking in that direction. Behind me was the recreational center. In front, you saw nothing but AK-47 shells because everybody wanted to be the dealer of the day. But this is what we have there now. We partnered with the housing authority, and we did a HUD. And this is when the 202s, weren't as popular, but it's like looking at the fact that people were returning back, and it's even more so now. It's a reverse migration. People from out west and up north are coming back to South Carolina because the cost of living and there's no union, so everybody's coming in. But guess what? People are getting old and they got nowhere to go. So we wanted to build our own for our seniors. So that's right next to the Texelville site, senior housing there. And the old ladies there, you see the flowers. Give somebody an opportunity. That is the Hope 6. Up at the top corner was public housing, and down at the bottom, that's the after of that, of the Hope 6. And that was a scattered site development that we have there. Keeping it affordable for the people in the community. And back then we were doing this thing, they had the radiant barrier, because on the space shuttles, how to keep things cool or burned up. And what we were doing, they had this radiant barrier you sprayed under the coating and the roof. And it did something about the reflection of the heat. It wasn't as hot in the attic. And you could see the actual temperature, the difference in the homes and the utilities for the people and their bills. So get creative. And right now, there is so much out there with the Department of Energy around this. We can truly get creative. And everybody can pick up one of these and you can search and put in. And you could almost come up with anything right now when you're looking at housing, infrastructure, parks, all of these different things. And what happened, EPA, I'll finish on so you don't keep me out. But in 2007, when President Obama was running, that's when EPA, thank you, Kyle. They had us running around doing this PowerPoint in communities. And so what they decided to do was create a collaborative problem solving. When they did that, it was 7 months later, the Korean reporters and the Institute of Social Conflict came to Spartanburg asking us, how did you do what you did? And it was kind of shocking. Last week, they came back for a follow-up because they wanted to measure the success. They knew more about our community than the people, the local government and the mayor and the environmental workers. They peel the onion back on Spartanburg. It's like, we have the same thing you have, but we see that this is truly a model. And so they came all the way from Korea and Region 4 pulled that off for us. And then later after that, we had the Taiwanese delegation come in. The
Wow.
government from Taiwan paid the university to come in and do the exact same thing. We had the South Africans and some folks from Switzerland and Germany. And that's the chemical plant. That's them sitting at the top up there, drilling everybody. They knew when the place shut down, how much toxicity, what did you do to compensate the folks? I mean, our folks was real nervous, like, we hope y'all are not paying attention to these Koreans. That's the recreational facility we built that was behind it. It was a problem. We went back and we were able to partner, and with the Department of Commerce, everybody talks about EPA. But if you look at the technical assistance and all these other agencies, right now, what we're doing is community conversation meetings around the country. The Department of Commerce, people don't pay attention to. That's where your opportunity zones and all these tax credits and Brownfield's tax credits. There are so many credits. And I know Senator Jackson was telling me about the facility that he built with those credits there. That's the same thing. Now we built the green recreational facility, and we got, because part of what they do with recreation, we got funding for them to build our field. And then Marcus Lattimore, who's from here, he partnered with one of the pharmaceutical companies, and they built the playground for the kids there. We had a food desert. We were able to clean a grocery store complex. Funny thing about it, when we got the weed seed grant, they talked about the grant, and when they actually did the assessment, we didn't have enough crime, as they say.
Wow.
They ain't got enough crime. I'll tell you what I did.
What a problem.
Look, we sat down, I was like, okay. They do this on the other side. I started gerrymandering all the crimes. So I treated all the housing that had high numbers into our project area, and we got the crime we need. We got our weed and seed grant. And they try to say, oh, we need some police department try to subsidize their shortcomings on the grant we got. And I'm telling you that because if you do go get the money, don't think that everybody is still on your side 100%. You still got to keep this eye open and this eye working. Because they are working themselves too. Now, that was what I was saying about the crafting style of affordable housing. From that there, we built 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath for 146.
That show them like what they couldn't be more rich.
Oh, yeah.
Right home ownership.
Keeping
Keeping it affordable for within the community. And we got our access road in with Senator Hollins. Our organization, the city and the county has not received a congressional earmark. We got 3. And till this day, they did not know how we were able to do it. But it's working with. Who's your congressman down there?
Jim Clapper.
Yep.
Who was the whip? I don't know how many times. And people with their attitudes, I don't like Jim.
Yeah.
You better quit playing.
Better brush that off.
We did this with the Department of Education, but this is the thing too that I'm gonna tell you. Renewable energy and the energy conversation, Black folks are less than 0.5% of the conversation right now. Richard Moore, you know, in Albuquerque, they got a $13 million STEM grant for ag. They got an agricultural STEM school. Now, And that, because that's their economy, agriculture. What is it that we do? We got all this industry in South Carolina, all this automation, all this AI. Where are our kids in that? I'm gonna tell you, I barely know how to text.
All right.
So all this AI and what's going on, are we preparing our kids for that? The Department of Education is looking for how to plug into the National Science Foundation. All these folks with all this money, President Biden made that clear across the board, not just EPA, but every federal agency. And you're talking about EPA was $60 billion. The thing about it, I mean, I serve on the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. But when he was candidate Biden, he asked, what can I do? People were talking about resources. They forgot about the technical part of this because 4 years ago, nobody was at the table. No one was being heard. There were no voices at the White House. Now, we're having meetings every week with decision makers from the federal agencies. You've got communities now that are administering and giving out, re-granting hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, you got the Grant Makers Award is getting ready to come out. We started with 20,000, but they're starting at 75,000 and 340 for planning. So there is opportunity across the board with all the agencies.
I'm writing.
I mean, you kind of get the picture, but that was just some stuff that we did with the kids from South Africa. But going back to it, I just want to show you, we had our elite students in high school did a debate. Well, it was the debate team from South Africa. We were doing this video conferencing. The kids from South Africa knew more about the BMW iCar automotive research part. Kids didn't know nothing about it. They were asking them about Beyonce, American Idol, all of it. And the teachers standing around, they were looking all embarrassed. And I mean, they were just, and the kids up there, man, they started running down that. And there's one little girl from the Sudan that was a little white boy in the front row, real smart aleck. And she told me, she's like, I like your attitude. And when I come there, I am going to look for you because I want you to work for me. Shut them down. But they're thinking, way different than our kids. And that's where we got to change this. And you got an opportunity right now, whatever you're applying for, that you can put into, because South Carolina, with all the car dealers, all the tire manufacturers, if you look at what's in this state, and the reason folks are not going into the corridor when I was in the legislature is because the education.
Right.
It's driven by that. Nobody's going to put their workforce where the plumbing is, hey, it's colder on the inside than the outside in the wintertime. And the condition of the books, nobody's doing that. But that's where you got to understand, work with your rep, because the answers are in the community. Just like we broke up the sex trafficking ring, when I got to the State House, that's when we passed the human trafficking bill. It was because being able to see what happened in our community. Hillary Clinton told me, she's like, look, guns and drugs come through 85, 95, and 20 through South Carolina. But y'all are not known for that. You're known for the human trafficking. And when I introduced that bill, everybody thought I was crazy. Chief Keel and the Sheriff's Association. The same day the bill was in committee is when they found a little girl in Lexington who was about 12 years old that had been trafficked. And then that's when Nikki Haley and everybody and Mr. Wilson, your attorney, all stepped up and the whole thing of human trafficking became an issue at that point. So please don't let people tell you what you know deep in your heart is the problem. Because if you let folks dictate what they think you should be and do, you'll never get to the end. And I'm not going to go through the rest of this, but just to tell you, we did clean up all those sites. That landfill, we're currently working to turn that into a 3.6 megawatt solar farm that the chemical plant is going to buy the energy from Regenesis.
Okay.
We're going to take that, the lifetime of taking at least 30% of their utility costs off of them and help power at that textile mill site. That's going to be our aquaponics farm that's going to be tied into our health center. Because the number one thing we see with patients is high A1Cs and blood pressure. So, and the thing they always tell them is change your diet. But guess what? We've given them a medical home, they've got prescriptions, but nobody can afford the organics, the fresh organics. So that's what we're doing. And we're tied with the University of California, Santa Cruz, because they got this microalgae diet that's high in omega-3 fatty acids. So you eat enough of that fish in the produce, it'll change the numbers. So that's what we're currently doing with that, finishing out the housing and being able to go around to other communities. Because we got a technical assistance grant with Bezos Earth Fund and Tom Steyer and Kat Taylor for helping some of their projects. But what I'm telling you is, what we've been able to do with some of these other communities, this community in California, or look just like us, the drinking water was 150 parts per billion of arsenic in their drinking water. They have zero access to healthcare. The county van picks them up once a month, 15 passenger van. So if you 16, 17, you out until next month. That's what they have. And we were able to put 40 million in the budget for them in California. They got theirs. The other folks, the American Indian community there in San Francisco, we got them 30 million into theirs. They got their collaborative problem solving. And it's like a domino effect of communities that never had voices, organizing, and in no time, they're pulling together and rebuilding their communities. This community in San Francisco, when I asked, who is your congressman? Oh, Nancy. I'm like, please don't tell me Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, that's her. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. She got them in the budget, and they've been rolling ever since. And with Governor Newsom, so I'm telling you, we got to take advantage of what you have. Excuse me for my long-winded voice, but that's a couple of cups of coffee and jet lagging. But for Lower Richland, you can do it because you got a voice in the state house. And the other thing I'll tell you is that with all this that I'm talking about and what's out there, there's another tool, the Milken Institute. Milken Institute is a tool that you can put your project in because everybody's talking about shovel ready and finding projects. And my thing that I was telling a lot of the agencies, quit saying it because local governments can't even do it themselves. And you're talking about shovel ready, but most of the dirt communities don't even have shovels. We have problems. We don't have projects, but you can put your project into no matter what stage, 30 seconds to 2 minutes, it matches to every federal grant that's out there, all 518 programs, it matches. It gives you a readiness assessment. It tells you what you can score right then on the time of applying. So this gets all the guesswork out of it. You take your project, you plug in, now you know what you got to go after. Talk to your representative, talk to the technical advisor, the Tic Tacs and stuff that we have here now. You can put it together and you can drive it. Just don't let anybody else step in and try to tell you. Yeah, you pray about it, but don't let nobody take you off your course because there is the opportunity here now. And don't know what's going to happen after the next 45 days or 50 days, how much we got left. But just pray and get out and make sure that we get this woman in. Because if we don't, there's a supermajority in South Carolina, like all the other places. And that constitution is going to be open. People can play all the games you want to, but I'll just wait for the next go round. I'm not going to vote for it. You ain't going to have a chance to vote again.
That's right.
Because when the dictator steps in, that's open. Checkmate. I don't know if there are any hands in here or not, but just
Rob. Lunch is buffet at 12. That's 11:43.
Thank you.
11:40.
Lunch is at 12.
I will give to whoever is in here for you to do a demo because they're doing the demos. It only takes about 15 minutes, no more than 20 with Q&A in there to help you. And once you load it up, you can continue to add your projects in there no matter what kind of project. Add it to get it in there so that you can go get some of this fun.
Ask him if it's milk and like milk and ING.
Great.
Thank you so much, Congress.
And we have some time for questions. Comments, and let's also use this time to start thinking, how do we convert this into lower Richland opportunities?
We got a mic.
Yeah, so, yeah, you got Mike's traveling, who's ready? Yes,
This is Dr. Something right now.
Dr. Sumner.
I was a former representative of you say Congressman up here in the fourth congressional district, I get killed.
Don't do it.
Quick question, you mentioned the building tool, you can provide the website for that.
Let's spell
Yes, I have it. That's what I'm saying, whoever is the,
Why don't we do this?
I can get it.
Why don't we'll find a way to do two things. One, we'll gather everybody who's interested, and then we'll find a support person that we will bring to the table to walk us through.
Yeah.
So we'll do that, and we'll send that out within the next week. So we'll everybody who's here,
with the Zoom.
then we'll go ahead. I'll just tell Monica this. Why don't we do this? Because we got some resources. So we'll go ahead and find someone who can walk us through. We'll get everybody the info, we'll reconvene, and then we'll make sure that everybody wants to, we can do that. And because I'm interested in knowing
Doing
where
those-
we all fall. So we can bring our laptops to the table, we have somebody walk us through it, and we get individuals be able to have that kind of evaluation very quickly. We'll do that within the next week.
They do virtual meetings as far as these demos, so what we do as soon as getting your email, you set up how many demos you
Yeah.
want to do. And Sarah Warner and got Reggie last name, they're the ones that's doing the demos for the milking team. As soon as I send it in and tell them I've got somebody, that's what I've been doing for them, is plugging the demo opportunities. And so I'll
Yeah.
reach with you, I'll do that when as soon as I get home, email them, let them know, and put your email on there.
I got it.
That way, it'll start
Right.
with red, so that you'll have that to set up the demo. As soon as you get on that,
I'm ready here. More questions and thoughts for each other. Yes, Robert.
So, Representative Mitchell, can you tell us just how much, just an aggregate amount that your community has received from the time you started until now? I just want everybody to know kind of just what the numbers look like. That's the first thing. And the second thing, I'm really interested in the opportunity to really talk about agriculture.
Yeah.
Because our community has a lot of land that we're not currently using, and so that's an opportunity for us to sort of reinvigorate that part of our economic opportunity.
we started with a $20,000 small grant, it's all within the project right now. It's roughly right at about 340 million. That's what I mean, but I know there's some others because we got two more facilities that's coming in because we were able to attract a Evernew, it's a garment recycling company, because we know that there's 17 million metric tons of garment waste at landfills. So we were able to attract them through Tom Steyer to get a green company in. So it's like they can take this suit, break it down, repurpose it without it going to the landfill. And so that's coming into the community as well. And that's another, it's 130 million there. So tag that on top of the three sums. So I'll have a better update on that. Sir. What was your last one?
About agriculture.
Agriculture. Agriculture, yes, USDA, because Representative Hildegard Bonner we did a community conversation, and USDA has a ton of money for rural development, and also tying into the HBCUs as a technical assistance with you. USDA has a ton of money there. And the other thing too, with Senator Jackson, I mean, is giving people what they need to help you. I don't care about the dynamics, but you have some people within your mix that, you know, he's on the freaking waste and meat. No.
Yep.
Senate Finance.
Finance.
Senate Finance. And so you have what you need from the state level, local level, and the congressional level. And if you just paint your picture.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes,
Sure.
Rob.
Yes, sir.
I wrote it out.
Okay, I heard you say something about earmarking funds. Could you really elaborate?
I really wrote it for you to give to.
About earmarking funds, please.
Yes, at one point, in Congress can't do it now because Mr. George says he doesn't believe in it.
Yes, sir.
But there was the point that when they put, different projects into the budget, our project got put in by Senator Hollins to get funds directed to us. EPA's appropriated. So we were able to get about $3 million out of the appropriations directly to our community. Now, they were still able to do that. You can go to Congressman Clyburn to do it. They don't do that anymore, especially right now because Speaker Pelosi was trying to do that with the Friendship House in California. And Jordan told her that they're not doing these special earmarks. Now, I know the State House did that this year. We went back to the competitive grant cycle because of your surplus, and you were able to get funding in there for projects within the community. But your representative has to have a project, a real project. If there's a real project, because it's got to go through that crap at the State House, that they're going to scrutinize and make sure that it is what it is. And our rep, Myers, was able to get $450,000 for the mentoring program with the Omegas here. She brought that back last month. That was the only thing he had. Went 3 years the process.
Thank you. Let's hear from this half of the room or in the back. Other questions, comments? Yes, Country.
Thank you for your presentation.
I don't think there's nothing wrong.
Oh, no, it isn't. Okay, well, thank you for your presentation. I had a quick question about your, I was wondering if there was any if there's a way to address the mental traumatic experience of the community over in agriculture. Because if you look at historically, the process of enslavement, there's a intentional disconnect between African people and land. So I think that's a pivotal or just an integral piece of this process of revitalizing agriculture and food deserts, things of that nature, and sustainability. So was there anything done in this project to address the mental traumatic experience of this community?
In our case, because I want to answer another part to that, but in our case,
Yeah, we in third.
this, as I say, it's set up the C2 to get control of the properties. And the textile mill, basically we own all the properties in there right now, especially like we're getting ready to put the solar. So it was kind of like her thinking back then, it's like you need to have control of the land. And we were able to do that back then. Now there is a couple of different pots and folks that are actually looking at this even more so through the USDA. And there's another program with that, but talking about the mental and behavioral, all that in there, that's tied a lot, I know, with, and you might not even believe it, I mean, HHS, because there are about 14 different programs inside the agency itself. So don't think
Your stuff in milk, it'll take you to all.
That's why agency looking to put your project in. The algorithm will pick up what you're talking about, and you'll be surprised because it also not only picks up the federal grants, but philanthropic dollars by Citco, as well as what's in the free state. So all of that will be pulled out.
Any more questions?
So one thought.
Thank you.
Right.
Do we have a land bank or can we partner with a state entity that owns land to develop properties?
Can't answer that, but I know what you, Omar and some of the other folks doing land banking work. I haven't, my whole thing was if it was in the community, I was gonna find a way to purchase it and grab it. Look, some of these terms, they call it that. Land banking. I know it's out there, I know they're doing it, but you might be able to answer that question, sir. But there are some experts in the state that are doing that with communities, land banking. And Deborah McKinney here in Greenville, she used to work with the Federal Home Loan Bank and Community Works. I know that's what she's helping the folks here in Greenville do.
So lunch is waiting for us in about 5 to 7 minutes. We've got time for a couple more questions. I think there's
It's one-
one
it's
that's
one
behind
more
the
that's on.
Mayor Pete. And then we'll come back around.
Dr.
I want to come back to the paper.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go ahead and then we'll come to Mayor Pete.
Okay, so I guess I'm just like maybe a question simultaneously. So we do own property in the Lower Richlands community that sits about 3.5 acres that we have a nonprofit that actually owns the church. So the land is pretty much pretty clear. So like I said, it's a little over 3 acres right down the street from McGrady on Kingsburg Road, as well as Western Lakes, which is an agricultural area as well. So what would be your take?
I think the biggest take on it, that's a big key in this is having site control. With a lot of these projects, and when you look at some of the grants, even with this community change, people say they want to do things, then they gotta, get this agreement and have some kind of control. But if you already have control,
Yes,
that's a big piece of.
Okay.
They're not making any more land, which is why everybody's trying to gobble and take up as much. Because we have a problem right here, right now. You've got a large Ukrainian population here, and they're coming in buying up so much property in Spartanburg right now. And the Russians, people didn't pay attention to the textile mills and all. They're buying up all of that, and our folks ain't thinking about it.
Right.
So
I would say the solar is something we'd be interested in. And I think I talked to Fran for that, but as far as the solar, as well as the housing, and then child development, want to focus on preschool, which is ages like 2 to 5th grade. To
Still preschool.
Also work on transitional homes, affordable housing. Be it a single family home or a duplex or a farm.
And so you could leverage that too with your properties and lenders and what the Department of Treasury is talking about, because it's like anytime they start talking about Treasury, people of color run because you think of IRS, right? But this lady told us, she's like, you don't understand. The Black and brown community doesn't understand how to stack these credits. Other folks do.
Yeah, right.
They're not spending their money. And when you have assets like land, there's a lot you could do and leverage with that.
Right.
Money begets money.
Thank you very much. You did an outstanding job. One problem I want to ask you about. We have a paper mill in our area. And I was just wondering, thinking about what you did with fertilizer, how y'all began to initiate that process. What actually caused you in the causation and how did you initially put together a concept to begin to address that issue? We're thankful, not necessarily, we don't have any scientific announcement on this point, but we're thankful because a lot of people in our area are having a problem with asthma. And so how did you actually begin to look at that?
It was what happened to me. And I started looking at the impacts of releases. And really almost educated myself in going to places where Peter Conrad talks about the place so and to be honest, it's not rocket science. And the humans are eating a melon, also.
You did get your take so far I shut this part of the live there. I've been live on Garfield's channel.
You want to talk?
Yeah. So I told y'all we had Brother Unc in the building. Just give him a little take on just the idea. So what I was explaining to people in the chat is that I was sharing with them when we talk about the Black community, what we need, where to get the resources from to start building on to revitalize our community. And so I wanted to just give them a little take. We ain't gonna give them a lot, just a little something.
I'll just start with this. What I was thinking about when I was hearing on the intelligent speakers, and what they was talking about, how to bring resources to the community. time to start to recognize that if you're not literate in the world around you, like we always talk about science literacy, right? I realize we're actually walking around like blind people. We don't understand nature. We think we do. We have a real pseudo understanding of what nature is, the real world. But when you put them lenses of science on, science literacy, then you got, that's the eyes. So science literacy is really the eyes. So you can see how to help your community. You talked about the other day, you're like, man, the foundation of getting money from our community is instant.
Still.
Yeah, so I'm telling y'all blind, right? And it's just good to be in the building amongst a whole bunch of intelligent people. Go ahead, buy more. I appreciate, like I said, put me amongst some high rollers, and we need that for our community. So we can separate the foolery and the nonsense and misinformation. It's all right here. It's basically being able to see the world. So yeah, this is what you don't right here. Top notch.